we're so pleased and proud that our graduation speaker is one of you. He too sat in those seats and studied in those classrooms and banged those same lockers and played around on those athletic fields. He too sat in preparation to go out. And since graduating from RC School in 2000, Ari Berman has achieved remarkable success as a political columnist, as a commentator, as an insightful and articulate author. He graduated from the Medill School of Journalism at Northwestern University, the top university school journalism program in the country, a degree in journalism with political science, and like Marshey School, it served him well. Because Ari went on to become a senior contributing writer for The Nation magazine. He's a reporting fellow for the Nation Institute. He's written extensively about American politics, civil rights, and this bizarre intersection of money and politics. His stories have appeared in the New York Times and the Rolling Stone and the Guardian. And he's a frequent political commentary on MSNBC and C-SPAN and NPR. His first book, Herding Donkeys, The Fight to Rebuild the Democratic Party and Reshape American Politics, was published in October 2010 by FSG. And his second book, Give Us the Ballot, The Modern Struggle for Voting Rights in America, was published last year by Farrar, Straus, and Giroux. It was named one of the best books of 2015 by the New York Times, by the Washington Post, by the Boston Globe, by National Public Radio. It was the editor's choice of the New York Times Book Review. It was a National Book Critics Circle Award finalist and the Kirkus Review's Best Nonfiction Book of 2015. With Ari's impeccable research and documented citations, Give Us the Ballot reveals the incessant attacks on voting rights in America since that landmark legislation was passed in 1965. His voice in print and in appearances at the White House, in Congress, and at the Supreme Court is a call to action to preserve this most fundamental democratic right, especially in this bizarre, polarized political climate of this election season. We're so proud of Ari and so grateful that he could take time to be with us here today and with his family to deliver your graduation address. Please welcome Ari Berman.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. I spent many years in this hall, and so it is great to be home. Thank you, Dr. Bell, for inviting me here, and thank you to all the teachers who inspired me, both those who are here and those who are not. And congratulations, most of all, to the students and your parents. It's a really remarkable day, and hopefully the first of many milestones. And it's really remarkable to me to see the diversity of your class, because we didn't necessarily have that same diversity when I was here. So it's really remarkable to see so many people from so many different places in the world find their way to Fairfield, Iowa. And I'm excited to see you guys go out into the world. I remember how excited I was to be sitting in your position as well. So I moved to Fairfield from New York City when I was just 6 months old. I was too young to remember any of this, but it was quite a shock for my parents. I remember my mom saying, "There's nothing to do. There was nowhere to eat." No wonder they spent all their time meditating. I went to this school from preschool until I graduated. I remember when Anna Unger was born. Many of my best friends in New York are people I went to school with right here. We have a special bond, and I've often thought about what makes us unique. I don't believe that we have all the answers because we grew up here or we learned how to meditate. But I do think that we were taught to look at the world differently, to recognize there's more to life than simply making money or having a good job or going to a good school. Those things are nice, but they'll only bring you happiness if you have inner peace and a sense of purpose. My parents and so many others moved here because of social action. They wanted to create a better world for themselves and their kids. I can especially relate to that because I now have a daughter. She's 20 months old today, and She's not here. If she was here, you would hear her quite loudly. But she'll be here at the reception. And most people today just know me as Nora's dad. I, too, was motivated by social action. But instead of looking inward, I looked outward to what fascinated me in the world. That's how I became interested in journalism. I was a good writer, I asked a lot of questions, and I was kind of a pain in the ass. All of those were important qualities to be a journalist. But I didn't know anything about journalism. So between my junior and senior year of high school, I attended a week-long journalism camp at the University of Iowa with my classmate, Eric Johnson. All the other kids had worked on their high school newspaper. MSAE didn't have a high school newspaper. And our project was to create our own paper in 1 week. And I was a little afraid that I wouldn't be able to do it. So I pulled a week of all-nighters, and at the end of the week, our paper was done. And I won an award for Best Newspaper Design, and Eric won an award for Best Photojournalism. I realized we can do this. Sometimes you're not sure if you'll succeed, but you have to take a leap and try. We came back and told MSAE we wanted to create a student newspaper. They said okay. We named it, not that originally, The Paper. We published only 1 issue, but we were busy, come on, we were seniors. But it was the first newspaper, as far as I know, the school ever had. I looked around my house, I was trying to find a copy for show and tell, but I couldn't find it. But I learned a lot from that experience. I realized that if you're passionate about something, don't wait for someone to give it to you. Go do it. You don't always need to ask for permission or follow someone else's lead. I applied to journalism school and went to Northwestern University. Just like when I first arrived at journalism camp at University of Iowa, it was an intimidating experience, and I wasn't sure I was up to it. There were 41 kids in my graduating class at MSAE, and 250 kids in my Intro to American Government class at Northwestern. I remember thinking I could leave here at any time and nobody would notice. My dad called me up and said, "You better not skip any classes. I'm paying way too much money to send you here." So I went to every class, at least for a while. I wasn't sure what I wanted to write about. I had been blogging for a website about hip-hop music. Some of the most famous people I've ever interviewed are still rappers, like Method Man and Redman. But I became more aware of the world because of what was happening around me. My freshman year of college was the 2000 presidential election. You guys will be in the same position in your first presidential election later this year. Hopefully there won't be another 36-day recount in Florida between Al Gore and George W. Bush. I remember thinking Gore had won, then seeing the networks say Bush had won Florida, then a friend waking me up at 3 a.m. and saying it was too close to call. I learned a lot about American politics during that time. I realized there was so much I didn't know about the world. I was horribly distraught when George W. Bush was finally elected, or more accurately, appointed president by the Supreme Court. I knew the world would change in many ways, not for the better, and the next 4 years would be very different from what I imagined. I went home to Iowa before my sophomore year in college. My mom woke me up one day in early September and said, a plane had flown into the Twin Towers. I was glued to the news. A few days later, I went back to college. I was angry, scared, unprepared to deal with the world. I started meditating again. I tried to do it my freshman year in college, but I was so busy with schoolwork, I lost track of my program. But after 9/11, it helped me a lot. I'm not a naturally calm person. My wife will be the first one to tell you that. But I needed to find some inner peace to go out into the world. I decided to study abroad in Geneva, Switzerland, at the beginning of my junior year, where the United Nations was based, because I wanted to learn more about how the world worked after 9/11. The Bush administration was preparing to go to war in Iraq. And I remember thinking that all the good work the UN was doing, whether helping refugees in Africa or children in Latin America, was going to be subverted by the US unilaterally going to war. I decided I wanted to write about American politics because I was appalled by how few in the media had asked tough questions about the Bush administration before going to war. I still remember the press conference Bush held before we invaded Iraq. The last question was, "Mr. President, what role does prayer play in your life?" I remember thinking, we're about to start a war for no good reason, and the press was asking Bush about prayer. I decided to work for The Nation magazine, the oldest weekly magazine in America, which was founded in 1865 at the end of the Civil War by abolitionists who opposed slavery, because I wanted to work somewhere that was independent, principled, and an alternative to the mainstream consensus. I learned that it's okay to dissent, to think differently, to have an unpopular point of view, as long as you're on the right side of history. Those principles have guided my career in journalism. I've tried to tell stories that are unique, that are impactful, to give voice to the voiceless, and to do something different from everyone else. I encourage all of you to make your own unique mark on the world. I became passionate about the issue of voting rights, the topic of my latest book, when I saw many states pass policies following Barack Obama's election to make it harder to vote. The election of the first black president was an absolutely thrilling moment for me, one of the highlights of my life. I was in Grant Park, Chicago, when Obama gave his victory speech in 2008. It's something I'll remember forever, like the people who were in Times Square when the US declared victory in World War II. But I saw the effort to make it harder to vote as an attempt to go backward following Obama's election. Instead of embracing the country's diversity, the diversity in this room, some felt threatened by it. The US likes to think of itself as the world's first and greatest democracy, but we've often excluded so many people from participating in it. When the Constitution was ratified, only white male property owners could vote. After the Civil War, when black men were given the right to vote, there was a vicious backlash, and people were killed just for trying to register. Hillary Clinton just became the first woman nominee of a major party 97 years after Congress passed the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. It's taken a long time and a lot of hard work to create a more perfect union. Barack Obama often says, quoting Martin Luther King, that the arc of history is long, but it bends towards justice. I think it's more accurate to say that it bends towards justice, but sometimes snaps abruptly back. We are in one of those moments again today. By fighting for the right to vote, I feel like I am fighting to create a more just democracy, to preserve the qualities of inclusion and equality that make this country great. You guys are the class of 2016. You're heading out into an uncertain world. I don't want to sugarcoat it. Last night, or as many of you guys woke up this morning, we saw that there was the worst mass shooting in American history. Donald Trump, a racist, sexist demagogue, could be president in 5 months if we all don't commit to stopping him. Talk about a threat to the collective consciousness of our nation. We need you to make the world better. It won't happen overnight, but it starts with a commitment to try. Find something that you're passionate about. Find something that's unique. Find something that will make a difference. Obama often said during the 2008 campaign, one voice can change a room. And if one voice can change a room, then it can change a city. And if it can change a city, it can change a state. If it can change a state, it can change a nation. And if it can change a nation, it can change the world. That change can start right here in this room as you guys go out into the world. Thank you for having me, and congratulations.